Hi everybody, this is Laura, City Scrapper. Thank you so much for joining me on my channel today. Today I have a layout that I made using the My Creative Scrapbook limited edition kit for February. This month the kit had quite a few 49 and market papers that I thought would be just perfect for backgrounds. So I started out with this paper. I cut it into 3 parts. I cut the center strip a little bit thinner and I flipped it over so that there would be a little bit of variety with the pattern papers on the layout. I inked the edges and I'm using some distress ink in Vintage Photo and a dauber. And then I used a punch from my stash. This is an EK Success punch and I love the way it's a lacy scallop. I punched out several strips from one of the papers in the collection, this gray paper. Now I'm attaching those punched out borders to the center strip. I like the way, even though this gray paper reads as a solid, it has a nice amount of variation in it. It isn't a flat color, and I think that that adds more life to the layout. I cut some really thin strips of this gray paper. I believe that this is from one of the branding strips, and don't ignore the branding strips on the papers in the kit. I use them quite a bit in making my layouts this month. So I thought that I would just use a thin strip on either side of this larger strip, and I think that it adds a finishing touch and a nice transition from the paper to the border. So I place that in the center of the layout, and I'm happy with the way that it's coming. So I add some ATG adhesive and I attach it down, but I want to be careful that it's not crooked. So I use the T-square, and I realized that I must have put down one of those thin strips a little crooked, so I straightened that out. Now I have selected several elements that I want to include on the page. And these are all from the ephemera pack and the punch-out sheet that comes with the kit. And I'm using, again, the Distress ink to ink all of the edges. To make a little variety and make the large green piece of ephemera look a little different from the other large cards, I used an EK Success punch that looks like a ripped out piece of spiral paper. I'm layering all those cards on the layout, and on top of it I place a frame that was in the cutout sheet, and I really like this frame. I was looking forward to using it. I picked out a title from the ephemera pack. It says Seek and Be Curious. I also use this circle. I had cut it out of another one of the ephemera or the layering pieces, and I used a large circle on another layout, and I knew that the center of the circle was going to be covered up, so I cut out this circle, and I'm really glad I did because I really am glad that I had this circle for this layout. The photo that I'm going to use is a photo of some rusted metal bars. I don't know the technical term. I'll tell you a little bit about why I took this picture and where the picture was taken in a moment. I add some thick white cardstock behind the photo because I want it to be a little thicker. I don't want the photo to bend when I pop it up on some foam. I was thinking that to go along with the mood of the photo, I would distress the edges of the ephemera pieces. So I use the side of my scissor to do that, and then I add a little bit more ink with the dauber. This photo was taken at a place called Letchworth Village, and I've spoken about it in my videos before because I have quite a few photos that my older daughter and I took when we went there. It is now an abandoned place. It used to be a mental health residential facility. It's absolutely huge, and while parts of it have been converted to other purposes, there are a lot of buildings that are dilapidated and run down and uninhabited. And while to some people it just looks like a really scary place, there's also some beauty in what's left. This photo is a close-up of a building that was 90%, I don't want to say demolished. I'm not sure if it was demolished or if it just fell apart. There were a few hints that there was once a building there, some parts of walls, but mainly there were just these twisted, rusted metal bars. And the remains of this building just intrigued us, so we both took a number of photos. I have been layering up all of those pieces that I inked and distressed the edges of, and now I'm popping up my photo on some foam and putting some adhesive on the back. I'm really struggling with getting that adhesive to stick to the foam, but once I do, it holds it down to that cluster very well. I was thinking of using this circle on the bottom and having part of the title fitting on the circle, and I leave that like that for a while. I add some tags to the top, and those were from, I believe, the ephemera pack in the kit. And I switch the colors around and I tuck those back in again. And then I was thinking that that circle stuck out too far to the left, so I cut it in half and I put half on the left and half on the right, and I like the way this looks better. And I'm still going to layer the title on top of that half circle. There were a lot of sentiments in the ephemera pack that went with this photo and this layout, so I picked out a couple. I picked out adventure, experience, and go outside. And it truly is an adventure to go to this place. Like I said, it's extremely large. There's a lot to it. I feel like there's always new things to see. I also put a banner in the top left-hand corner. It says Outside Adventure, and I layered a yellow circle underneath it that was also from the ephemera pack. Now these leaves are from the cut-apart sheets, and I'm cutting them into the individual leaves and spreading them around the layout. I mainly cluster the leaves by the two half circles, and I also put a couple of leaves on that top cluster with the banner. I wanted to add a pop of yellow to the lower right-hand corner, so I use a banner and I layer the sentiments on top of the banner. Then in order for the sentiments and that banner to go along with the rest of the layout to match it, I ink the edges with the Distress Oxide. There are a lot of colors that I like to use to ink the edges of elements on a layout. I've been using this vintage photo quite a bit lately. I think that it's a good choice for this collection because there are a lot of touches of brown in the layout, and then also it's an outdoor themed collection, so I feel that the brown just goes well with that sort of theme. Those half circles became pretty important to the layout as far as where I put the embellishments, so I thought that I would give them a little bit more emphasis by popping them up on some foam, and that also helps me to have a place to tuck embellishments under. I had to remove some of the foam from the back of the title, but then once I cut off half the foam, I realized that I needed some more foam on the other side so that it would sit flat on the layout. So I pop that up on 2 layers of foam, and then I begin attaching down the leaves with the ATG adhesive. I don't include all the footage of attaching everything down to the layout. I do want to point out that I popped up the banner on the upper left-hand corner and those 3 sentiments on the lower right-hand corner on some foam. Now I'm putting a butterfly by those 3 sentiments, and I move the bird a little bit further up the layout to the right of the photo. And here I'm popping the butterfly up on some foam. And I have had some questions. When I say foam, I'm talking about adhesive foam, and you can buy that at the craft store. It's in the kids' craft section. I like to buy the kind that has one side with adhesive on it. It's the perfect thickness if you want to add a little bit of dimension to your page, but not very much. Whoever thought to use this on scrapbook layouts is a genius, and I owe them a thank you. I don't know who they are, but I really love this foam. Here I'm adding some foam to the wings of this larger butterfly. I put that right on top of the photo. I was thinking that I wanted to try and see if I liked adding additional punched out border strips on the right-hand side of the layout and the left-hand side. I punched them out of the gray paper that was in the kit, and I inked the edges again with that vintage photo ink, and I liked the way that looked, so I attached both of those down. And I wanted to add a thin strip of paper to both of these border strips too, so I cut a very thin piece of this light gray paper that's from the kit, and I ink the edges of that, and I attach that down as well. And even though it's just a thin strip of paper, I think that these little touches add something that makes the layout look more finished and a little bit more interesting. I wanted to add another element to the layout. I like to use things that are made of different materials in the layout, so I often will add self-adhesive pearls. These are from my stash, and I do keep a lot of these on hand because I add them to most of the layouts that I make. I'm using some gel glue and I'm attaching them down. They are extremely tiny, tiny little pearls, and I just think they add, again, like a nice little finishing touch to the layout. Because this is a photo of an area that is quite overgrown with plants, I wanted to add some more leaves to this layout. So I use a die from my stash. That's an Alinacutle die. That's from AliExpress. It's a store that makes unique dies. And I used the pattern papers in the kit and I cut out 2 branches, and I put one on the upper right hand corner and I'm going to put the other one on the lower left hand corner. I used 2 different colors of Distress Oxide to ink these branches. I used Forest Moss and also Rustic Wilderness. And of course, I could have die cut the leaves from some white cardstock, but I like using the pattern paper because I feel that something from the pattern paper always shines through or comes through the inks, and I prefer that to just using plain white paper, but you could do that as well. There was another die in the same set that had smaller leaves, so I cut out some of those as well, and I inked those in the same way that I inked the other leaves. And you could see that I'm tucking them in a couple of different places around the layout. I was thinking that they would be perfect for the smaller clusters since they're smaller leaves. I used some flowers from the punch-out sheet to frame the photo a little bit. So I add 2 flowers on the left and then the single one on the right. And then I liked the way those looked right away. I attached those down. I switched out the butterfly that was on the top left-hand corner with a red butterfly to go with the other butterflies that are on the layout. Now those 3 red butterflies make a diagonal down the page and the 3 green butterflies make a triangle. Like on most layouts that I make, I wanted to add some white splatters to the background. I'm not really sure what it is about the white splatters. I think that it adds just a little bit of a random element to the layout, and I just like the way they look. So I added a few of them. I didn't go absolutely crazy, and I'm not really sure why I put down plastic and then I take up the plastic and add more splatters, but I seem to do that a lot lately too. I add some pearls to the tags instead of string, and then I add a couple of self-adhesive pearls to the title and to the sentiments, and then I also add one to the top cluster on the left-hand side so that they would be on all of those main clusters. And even though the pearls are self-adhesive, I like to add some glue. It just makes me feel more assured that those pearls are going to stay put. And I had a little bit of trouble manipulating that very, very tiny little pearl, so I used my scissors to help me out. And that was the last touch. Here come some close-ups. Thank you so much for watching this video, everyone. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you're interested in this kit or you would like to check out any of the other kits by My Creative Scrapbook, you can click on the link in the description box and it will take you right to the page where you could check out the kits and buy one if you would like. I'll also put a link to the blog, and they've been featuring craft room tours. My craft room tour video was on the blog yesterday, but there are lots of others, and if you're like me, you like to check out everybody else's craft room. Have a fantastic day, everybody. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.